Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Wildcard Devy Show. Phil and Jack here again, just to talk you through the latest happenings in the Devy world. Jack, how are you, mate?
Mate, I am buzzing. I've got a story for you and our listeners. But yeah, this week has been excellent for one particular reason. But I'll share that in a sec. How about you? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Obviously, it is rookie draft season. The NFL draft took place last weekend. And, we're all very excited about our shiny new toys, particularly in Devy. We now know where the players that we've had for years have landed. And all our supplemental drafts are going on. I'm in 2 live drafts as we speak. So if I look distracted, that's why. But no, come on. We want to hear the story because I kind of know the start of the story, but I don't know the details. So talk to us.
Yes, so this ties in with the reason that I am an Ohio State fan and something that ties into that particular game. So this week on Vinted, they don't sponsor us, but if you're listening, we'll take a fee. I managed to find my dream jersey, my dream Ohio State jersey. I'm going to show it to you. It's this bad boy over here. Okay.
Nice. Okay.
It's a grey out Ohio State number 16 jersey. And that is significant because the first game of college that I ever watched, I was away with my wife. We've gone to a spa weekend. I'd done one treatment. That was enough for me. I was out. My wife wanted to go for another massage. And I was like, I'm going to sit in the hotel room. I'm going to see what sport's on. Big NFL fan at the time, but not really dipped into college. So I chucked on ESPN as it was at the time and found a game going on. And Ohio State were down 28-3 to Penn State back in 2017. And this is the game where Ohio State were destroyed in the first half by a Mr. Saquon Barkley. And if you have seen him go off in the NFL, I promise you that game and that season, he was something different. He proved exactly why he went to the Giants so early in the first round of that draft. And as dynasty players, we were all quite taken aback, but he proved why he was so good. And Ohio State started the comeback, and I found myself as a classic British man rooting for what I thought was the underdog, but obviously Ohio State are quite an established program, but at least rooting for the team that were losing to complete the comeback. And that game, Ohio State were led by JT Barrett at quarterback, who wears number 16, and he led Ohio State back into the game to win it in the fourth quarter with a late touchdown to a relatively unknown tight end called Marcus Barr, who did play for the Washington Redskins, as they were. And this jersey was worn in that game. It's a grayscale, grey out jersey. They wear it once every 4 years maximum. And I just felt like a real affinity to it. I loved that Ohio State got the comeback and they became my team from that day on. And that's like one of those classic games that I will rewatch every now and then to remember, well, the game itself, but also why I love college football and why I love Ohio State. So I am buzzing. I got that for a tenner. There's no way that is a legit jersey, but also there's no way that you're going to pick one up in the UK. So to find it on Vinted in the right size, mate, absolutely buzzing.
I love it when a plan comes together. Love it when a plan comes together. Well, I'm just sat looking at our camera at the moment, and I've realised that with the kind of mic setup I've got going on and the Bama polo, I look like I'm trying to be an offensive coordinator. All I need is a clipboard. It's a really strange look, and now I've seen it, I can't unnotice it.
I know what to get you for your birthday then, mate.
I'll take it on a, what do they use? Microsoft Surface? I'll take one of them rather than a clipboard, mate.
Okay.
So tonight we want to kind of talk depleted rookie drafts. Obviously, that's the kind of season we're in the Devy world at the moment. So we want to get a little bit of rookie draft fever and find out how each other's rookie drafts are going and look for some depleted rookie draft gems, and perhaps some players that we think are slipping through the cracks that you might be able to pick up. College football's it never stops. Recruiting's always going on, but that's really kind of where we're at the moment. We're in the recruiting phase. There's been spring ball and spring games. We talked about a couple last time. There's been a few more that we might touch on, but we really just want to kind of bring you up to date on a few things that are going on and keep you up to date with where players are at and what's happening across the college football scene. And then we decided that this week we would try and bring to life and discuss one of the features we use on our X page during the season. And we got into the habit towards the back half of last season of releasing a weekly top 5. Now, that could be anything college football, anything Devy, just a top 5. And Jax pointed out that today is the day that players in college football have to declare whether or not they intend to enter the transfer portal in this kind of latest opening. So we have decided to go today with our top 5 players who we think should, not necessarily saying they have, okay, but should have entered the transfer portal to help salvage or improve their Devy stock. Okay, so plenty going on, and then we'll finish, as always, with a game of sell, hold, and acquire. Hashtag no copyright infringement. So we will start then, Jack, okay, with a little bit of rookie draft fever, okay. How are your depleted rookie drafts going?
Yeah, pretty good. I've only got one going at the moment. It started off very nicely for me. It's a very strange league. It's one that Jord is commissioning for us. I know you're in it as well, Phil.
Yeah.
Where we have drafted recruitment classes. So some players, and I would say more players, have slipped through the cracks because someone like Jaden Daniels would have stood alone in a recruiting class because he stayed for an extra year. There's not many Devy players of much value that were the same age at LSU. So I had a terrible first season with injuries and ended up with a 101. So Jaden Daniels, welcome to the squad, joining Drake May, who was in the recruitment class that I had picked up in the initial draft. So I'm pretty happy. 2 sparkly new quarterbacks to hopefully take me from 0 to hero.
I like that. Yeah, obviously I'm in that one as well, and never have I been so less enamored with the 4th and final round of that rookie draft because you draft in full draft classes. An awful lot of the pool was taken. So even in your kind of regular dynasty, like the later rounds get thin. This has got really, really thin, really, really quickly. But I am quite happy that I came away with Michael Penix, obviously in a similar way that you got Jaden Daniels, because of the age of Penix as a senior. There's a lot of people already from his initial recruiting class in the league already, which meant that those draft classes and recruiting classes weren't picked up in the initial startup draft, which meant Penix was available, which felt quite nice at the 104. I can afford to sit and wait for him to actually maybe play it down in about 4 years' time, when he'll be 30, something like that. But yeah, I can afford to take the wait. But after that one got pretty sparse pretty quickly. But I suppose that just kind of leads us on quite nicely, mate. Is there any particular players that you've noticed slipping through the cracks in your startups that you're thinking about targeting?
Yeah, I think especially for leagues that have started in the last 2 or 3 years, 3 of those first-round quarterbacks are available. I think Jaden Daniels is probably the borderline. When he went to LSU, people might have picked him up at the end of a 3-round Devy draft startup. But I don't think Bo Nix or Michael Penix were being picked up because their draft stock was pretty low, and the excitement is more around the freshmen coming in. So in those kind of leagues, anything that's younger than 3 years, you're picking up some of those quarterbacks. There's players like Lad McConkey, Ricky Pearsall, Malachi Corley, who got some good draft capital. There's no real explanation needed there as to why we're interested in those players. They went to pretty good landing spots. They've got good draft capital. But then players that are going to be available in almost all Devy depleted drafts, rookie depleted drafts, at the moment that I am targeting: Ben Sinnott, second round pick, tight end to Washington; Javon Baker, third round pick to my Patriots. I think that's a player with real superstar potential, a real rough diamond that needs polishing and shaping. But you just see from some of his post NFL draft hype videos how motivated he is and what kind of player he's going to be. And the Patriots absolutely need it. There's a gaping hole. That room is wide open. So looking at Javon Baker and one of our favorite college producers, Ray Davis, fourth round pick. He's going to the Buffalo Bills. Now, fourth round draft capital day 3 isn't ideal, but there are 132 carries vacated by a combination of Ty Johnson, Damian Harris, and Leonard Fournette last year. And I think Ray Davis goes in and slots in as the second running back there and could sweep all of those. I mean, he's not going to sweep up all of those carries, but he's got the chance to. Looking at those 3.
Yeah, I think Ray Davis is a great shout as well, because it appears Buffalo, are onto something with James Cook, but they're very clear in how they want to use him. They want to use him on passing downs. They want to get the ball in his hands. They don't want him doing the ground and pound work that his frame's not built for. And we know that Ray Davis can, like you said, do a little bit of everything. And I think he's going to pick up a good number of those touches. And we know, given his age, like we've spoken about that before, for me, he's coming into the league at an age where a second contract might be unlikely, but we know he's talented. So why not ride the wheels off him and get your money's worth carries wise? I think he could be a great value. I kind of have noticed as I've been doing this that I've actually come in away with quite a bit of another Patriot. I'm really intrigued in the final rounds of mine by the upside of Jaheim Bell at tight end as a pass catching weapon. Obviously, college production wise has been mixed over his time at Florida State and then coming across to South Carolina. But he's got a skill set that I think lends itself really, really nicely to a rookie quarterback. And I think he could see the field quite a bit. Talk to me about him, Jack. Like, what's the situation in the tight end room with the Patriots? Am I onto a winner?
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots needed another tight end. So Hunter Henry is there, and he's your primary receiving tight end in that room. But there's definitely space at tight end too. And the Patriots traditionally have run a lot of 2 tight end sets. So Jaheim Bell's frame is massive. And he played a little bit of running back, weirdly, in his last 2 years of college. So he has shown flexibility, maneuverability, and they say the more you can do, the more you stick around. So
yeah, well, I mean, another former Patriots made a career out of it, hasn't he? Ty Montgomery, like, has stuck around on rosters by being able to play a little bit of receiver, kind of plays a big slot, kind of sweeps and running backs, and kind of as a running back, and kind of putting him in motion and getting the ball in his hand. But again, you wouldn't say it's particularly great at any of them, yet he seems to still be farming out a career. There's not many running backs that are still making a living at the kind of age of 30 now. So yeah, absolutely, it might be a nice move there. I'm looking at him at the moment in the late rounds, and I also seem to be picking up a significant amount of Malik Washington. I like that landing spot at the Dolphins. He's slipping through, and you can kind of pick him up in the second round of those depleted rookie drafts I'm finding, or the back end of the first to the middle of the second, depending on what's gone and what's available. I just think, like, he's quick. I heard a podcast. I think it might have been the Draft Dudes podcast. One of their presenters is a Dolphins fan. They were saying he offers a really nice, refreshing change in their wide receiver 3 role to what they've previously had in River Craycraft and Braxton Berrios. Malik Washington's a little bit more rocked up, a little bit more jacked, quicker, stronger, and they're expecting him to contribute straight away. And he just seems to be. I don't know if it's just how it's fallen, but I'm looking at my board, I'm looking at rankings, and I'm looking at the players available. It just always seems to be around there when I'm picking, and I think, you know what, why not? We'll have a go. It might all get ruined because the rumor is the Dolphins are looking at bringing in Odell Beckham, but who knows? We'll wait and see.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he's fallen so far. I think there was a lot of hype especially in the week before the draft, where Malik Washington could have been a day 2 pick. Now he didn't get that capital. He went on day 3, and that's maybe poured a bit of cold water on his hype. But he absolutely exploded in the Virginia offense this year, and he's, if he continues that trajectory into the NFL, he can really carve out a role. Yeah, like you say, we're looking at second round, third round of depleted rookie draft. So you're not looking for a day 1 starter for your roster, but certainly a player with upside in a fun situation.
Absolutely. So, I suppose that kind of brings us on then. Like one of the questions we actually got asked on X this week was we've talked a lot, and particularly in our last episode when we were talking about trading. And trading for depleted rookie picks, and some owners value them, some owners don't. And I was asked about if there are any good trends or years to try and collect depleted rookie draft picks. So I thought I'd hit that one first, if that's all right, Jack. And just to simply say that every class is different. For me, these are more about knowing your roster construction and what you need. I'm more keen, as I've said previously, to get onto the depleted rookie draft picks, to find an extra quarterback, to find, like we mentioned at the start, a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix that have slipped through the cracks, or a Jaden Daniels, if you're fortunate enough to have the 1-1 in that. And again, in a lot of them this year, perhaps not Devy ones, because I think he was a name on Devy's teams, but in a normal dynasty one, you could pick up Roma Doomsday this year. That's not an uncommon move at all. But really, for me, if I need a quarterback or I need a tight end, I'm looking to bolster my depth here. So yeah, that's where I would go and try and collect some picks if I know I need those positions. But I suppose then, Jack, are there any kind of trends or good years, bad years, to kind of look at picking up those depleted rookie draft picks? Are there any kind of quick wins we can give to owners?
Yeah, I think the quick wins, I think I'm going to get a reputation for saying sell, but the time to get rid, if you're looking to capitalize on value and a couple of trends, I'd be looking to get rid of my first year rookie depleted draft picks, because the pool has been drained by your startup Devy draft. So you've gone 3 rounds, you're going to find all of the players that are going into the NFL have been snapped up pretty early, because they're going to be on people's rosters soon. They're going to score points early. We know who the superstars are generally. That's a general rule. So anything after the 103, I'm not really interested in keeping hold of. So if you can sell those first round picks early, even during your startup draft, that's a tactic that I like to use to gain value and see that first rookie depleted draft is going to be a bit sparse. The other time where I don't want, or we could say the positive, the time that I do want rookie depleted draft picks is when there's a glutton of quarterbacks going in the first round of the NFL draft. So when that happens, players like Zach Wilson and Trey Lance in the same draft class push the other talent at wide receiver and running back and tight end further down the board. So that's where I am interested in first round depleted draft picks, because the value is dropping, obviously assuming that I don't need a quarterback. But even if I do, then I'm going to trade up for a depleted rookie draft pick. Now, the reverse comes when you have, like in 2022, Kenny Pickett was the only quarterback drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. There was murkiness around the prospects before we got there. There were a few players that were touted as the 101 that fell to the 4th round or 5th round. So the less we contemplate that, the better. So in that round, your first is not as valuable, because the quarterback might get picked 101, but then if you don't have 102, 103, the top talent that has slipped through the cracks is gone. And we had the same in 2015. It's not just a 1-year trend. In 2015, Mariota and Winston went 1 and 2, but then we didn't have another quarterback go until round 4 or 5 in the NFL. So my tip here is based on that. The murkiness around the 2025 Devy quarterbacks makes me unsure how long the talent is going to last in those depleted first round. So I'm looking to sell 2025 depleted rookie picks because I don't think the talent's going to last beyond the 102.
There you go. You heard it here first. Okay. Yeah, and again, the only other one I'd add to that is, look out when Jack's talking about talent slipping. We've mentioned previously tight ends. If there's a decent tight end class, don't waste your draft picks or don't waste your Devy picks on them. Save it for depleted rookie picks and make the most of them there. Absolutely. Okay, so it's a bit of a strange time, isn't it? I feel like rookie draft fever we're well on top of, but in terms of the rest of college football, we've seen some spring ball, we've seen some transfer portal kind of rumblings. We know that there's things going on, but it's a bit of a quiet news time. So we just thought we'd bring you up to date with a few things going on in the Devy landscape and a few just kind of general talking points, really. So, Jack, I'm going to give you the first question, mate. Okay. Obviously, one of the big transfer portal moves has been Jaden Rashada transferring to Georgia. And I just want your opinion, mate, on how it affects Carson Beck and his status as a Devy asset.
Yeah, an interesting question. Competition can bring some uncertainty, but I just can't conceive of a world where Rashada is a threat to Beck in this year. And I can't conceive of a world where Carson Beck looks to stay at school for another year. I don't know if he even can. In this modern world of college football, there's usually some way of extending your stay in college, looking for a redshirt year or an injury year or whatever. But I just don't see this as a move that harms Beck's value or boosts it in any way. I think at best, this is Rashada maneuvering himself into a spot to start at Georgia next year. But Carson Beck is Kirby Smart's guy. He chose to come back, and bar a tight SEC title game last season, which I know you were delighted went the other way, then Georgia would have been hunting down a three-peat. So I'm not worried about Carson Beck's Devy value. If anything, Rashada could boost that competitive nature in Beck, and we'll see a little bit more. But I think he's such a composed and calm quarterback that suits the system so well. I just don't think anything really happens to his Devy value.
No, I think you're right. So Rashada has a minimum of 2 years left.
Minimum, yeah,
3.
2. Minimum 2,
yes.
Maximum 3, I think.
So maybe he's got to be looking at the pipeline and saying, I hold a clipboard for a year, which is a brave move, particularly the way he was playing last year. Maybe he feels like he's going to be the guy, or maybe promises have been made that he's in pole position to land the job after this year. But yeah, I think you're right. I think this is Carson Beck's job to lose. I can't particularly perceive a situation where he does lose it. And I think I'm on record now as saying, although we know we're not overly high on this QB class at the moment, he to me stands out as the guy most likely to lead that room. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting. It was more. It's the one big move that we've definitely seen, and I wanted to make sure that I was reading the tea leaves the same as everybody else, I think. So yeah, cheers for clearing that one up. Yeah, so Jack, tell me, what's been on your mind? What have you been thinking about in this kind of dead season in college football, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm pondering a player whose position is a bit unclear. So what are you doing with Travis Hunter as a Devy asset? Is he even a Devy asset? Is he going to play wide receiver, or is he an overpriced IDP player that's going to sit for a few years.
Yeah, this is a tough one, isn't it? Like, we obviously included him in our recent 3-round Devy startup mock in the 3rd round and said, there is a great opportunity to take a punt on him in the hope that he turns into something. Now, in the talent factor is unquestioned. Like, the talent factor, he is a legit talent and a unique player in the respect that he plays both ways. But I just thought it was interesting. Like, we're in that kind of time of the year where everyone starts releasing their way too early 2025 first round NFL mocks, and obviously the clickbait junkie here, scrolling social media, I've clicked on a couple and had a good read, see where people think the lie of the land is, and he's going in the top 10 of most people's NFL way too early 2025 mocks. But every single one I've read definitely lists him as a cornerback rather than as a wide receiver. A couple go on to mention that he plays 2 ways, and obviously mention his coach at Colorado, who was obviously a very, very good 2-way player back in his day, but then obviously settled down to become one of the game's best ever corners. And, I'm not saying for a moment Travis Hunter will go on to do that, but I think the early signs of that pathway is going to be the same. Even if you look later at one of the last ones to really make a good stint at playing 2 ways, obviously Charles Woodson had taken snaps at receiver at college. Once he got to the league, he very much settled as a defensive back. And, at the moment, I see Travis Hunter going the same way. There's obviously a point where he might be worth a punt in your Devy draft, depending on what the board's looking like. And if you've picked up an extra pick in a mid to late round, and you think, do you know what, I'm going to go for it. But before that, I think I'm quite happy to let other people be the ones that take the gamble. If anybody wants to spend a 1st round pick on him, a 2nd round pick on him, be my guest. Like, let him be your problem. Best case scenario is everyone's standoffish in your league and everyone doesn't commit and thinks, oh, what's he going to do? And then he slips into your depleted rookie draft. And at that point, I think I'd be happy to take a gamble because you'll know more about his process. You'll know more how he projects and profiles and what the league thinks of him. Because obviously you'll have seen where he ends up getting drafted.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a dream scenario, isn't it? If he isn't picked up in your depleted rookie drafts, forget that. If he is not picked up in your Devy drafts, then you could maneuver yourself towards the end of next season into picking up the Devy 101 because he will be the depleted rookie 101 if he's not been picked up, if he goes and plays wide receiver. And we'll know pretty early what the NFL wants to do with him. I hope we'll get an indication this year at Colorado as to what he wants to do in the NFL. And I think in the mock that we did, you summed it up perfectly. In the 3rd round, if you've got the capacity to take a flyer and burn a pick, then you can take Travis Hunter. And if he works out, you have the steal of the draft. And if he doesn't, you've already resigned that pick to nothing. So you don't feel too bad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Final one then, Jack. All right. Just in terms of the landscape and what's going on at the moment. Obviously, we've had plenty of spring ball. And the name that is on the tip of everyone's tongue after a very impressive spring game performance is Arch Manning. So I want to know generally, what does the future look like for Arch Manning after such an impressive spring game performance? I know we shouldn't read too much into them, but with the Devy hype that's surrounding him anyway and the family name, where do you see this going?
Yeah, I loved watching Arch Manning's spring tape. He really did ball out, and I think he really put to bed any of the analysts that were saying that he's only got his ranking so high because he is a Manning. And I think Arch probably needed this. I think it does his Devy stock a world of good because it gets rid of those naysayers. He put on tape the talent and the skill set that you want to see at this point. Obviously, we would love to see someone this good start in year 2 and see the field a lot more, which at the moment it really doesn't look like is good to happen. I just don't see Arch Manning beating out Quinn Ewers. I think Quinn Ewers gives Texas the best chance of smacking the SEC in the mouth, making a push for the playoffs, and obviously the hope there is that they can make the national championship game. Who knows what gauntlet that looks like in 2024, but I think Quinn Ewers gives them the best shot at doing that. However, if Sarkisian believes that Arch Manning gives them a better chance, he will bench Quinn Ewers. I have no doubt about it. So really, if you are a Devy player with Arch Manning on your roster, you just have to trust the coaching staff at Texas, because they are not going to put Arch Manning in a quarterback battle. If they switch to Arch Manning, that's a permanent switch. You can't dilly-dally between Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Texas can't afford to do that in this season. Sarkisian can't afford to do that. It's just not worked out well in the past when that has been the case. So I think the spring tape is great for Arch Manning's Devy stock. If you want to sell him now, I think you'll be selling him early, though. Again, he's someone who I would preach again and again. As soon as he gets the starting job, that's when I want to sell Arch Manning, and I'm okay with losing out on a bit of value, because there's a definite peak in his trajectory. Not necessarily the peak, but a peak is coming, and that's when he sees the field. So I think it's great. I think it's a real talking point. Texas are going to be in the headlines every week this year. And
Agreed.
If Arch Manning doesn't see the field, that's fine. I'm not concerned.
Yeah, okay. I agree. I think there's an avenue that leads quite nicely into what we're going to talk about next, because obviously we wanted to bring to life one of our kind of regular X features, and we wanted to look at our top 5. And again, we said we can call that anything, just top 5, whatever we fancy that week. Okay, what's going on in the world of Devy that we can top 5 and make a list out of, because who doesn't love a list? And so I decided we'd have a look at the top 5 players we think should be testing the transfer portal. So in this, I really wanted to look at this from the caveat of either improving their Devy stock or salvaging any Devy stock that they might have left in order to kind of take that boost. And I thought it was quite a nice follow-on just with that conversation about Arch Manning there, because, you know, I think that's another underlying factor if he doesn't win the job. Like if he's steadfast in being out in 3 and into the league and earning mega bucks, that's not to say that he won't earn a lot in NIL staying in college, but he's going to earn more if he's actually playing. You know, how long can he afford to wait? So you never know. I just thought that was quite a nice transition, and maybe he makes the list at some point for one of us. So in terms of housekeeping, Jack, if we go 5-1, 5 being obviously the least preferable all the way up to number 1. And if we take it in turns, I'm a gentleman, I'll let you go first. So who's your number 5?
My number 5 is someone who has actually entered the transfer portal in the last couple of days, and that's Keon Grays. So he is a wide receiver who has been at Ohio State. He came in the 2022 class as a 4-star, borderline 5-star recruit. Certainly was a top 65 recruit across the board on recruiting sites. And that 2022 class of receivers has really suffered through COVID years and returning wide receivers at Ohio State. So Caleb Burton and Caleb Brown have already left. Kojo Antwi is the only remaining receiver from that 2022 wide receiver class at Ohio State, because Grays has just announced his name into the transfer portal. And I think he needs to. It's to salvage, like you say, salvage some of his Devy value. He's a very talented receiver. He has 1 catch in his 2 years of college ball. And last year he missed nearly the entire season with injury. So there's partly he needs a bounce back from that. But with Chris Olave coming back, with Emeka Egbuka coming back for an extra year, and the influx of talented wide receivers in the 23 class and now the 24 class. He just needed to get out of there because there's too many mouths to feed, and he's not shining, but he has the potential to do so somewhere else.
Is there any kind of crystal ball as to where he's going to go? Are there any early favourites? Is he looking at landing in a good situation?
Yeah, so he's an Arizona guy. That's where he grew up. I saw he has an official visit with Arizona State. He was sought after by Arizona as well as USC. So there's some big school names there. I think Arizona or Arizona State makes a lot of sense. I'd much rather he go to Arizona than Arizona State now that Rashad has entered the transfer portal.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think he might end up going hometown.
Cool. Okay. Oh, well, funnily enough that you went with an Ohio State receiver at number 5, because I've done exactly the same. And you kind of alluded to it there. There's a logjam of talent because every year, kind of widely known now as Wide Receiver U for the amazing work that Coach Hartline's doing with that wide receiver room. And I've gone Brandon Inniss, big time recruit last year from the IMG Academy, and his high school film was phenomenal. There is a talented young man there, and he has just got lost in the shuffle. If there was ever any evidence that really goes to show why early enrollees tend to perform better in their early kind of season, Carnell Tate was the guy who was recruited kind of second fiddle to Brandon Inniss, not vice versa. One got to school early and enrolled early in Carnell Tate, and he hit the ground running. Brandon Inniss kind of came in and constantly seems to be playing catch up. And he's going to get stuck. He's going to get stuck in the shuffle if he doesn't make a decision about his future. I don't know how you feel about that, because I'm sure as an Ohio State fan, you would want to have as many of these talented guys all on the roster at the same time. But purely from a Devy perspective and reigniting and kind of boosting some of that value, I think Inniss has got to look at the likelihood of him seeing a significant snap share this year. And if it isn't there for him, I think there's going to come a time where he's really got to start considering where his future lies.
Yeah, I think it is a real balance between Ohio State hat on and Ohio State hat off. And Brandon Inniss has really quite a direct one-on-one competition right now with Jeremiah Smith, the freshman receiver who is lighting up training camp. And it's really those two are battling it out for the wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 spot on the Ohio State roster. So it really depends how much Brandon Inniss backs himself. Does that extra year in the Woody Hayes Center give him a leg up on Jeremiah Smith, or is the raw talent of Smith outshining what Inniss is going to do? I like, as an Ohio State fan, the attitude that he is not even considered the transfer portal, that he wants to prove himself in arguably the best wide receiver room in the country. So it is on a knife edge for his Devy value. If he forces his way onto the field, he could boost his Devy value beyond what it was coming in as a freshman.
Certainly. Okay, number 4.
Number 4, I didn't intend this to be an Ohio State run, but it is. It's Devin Brown, the quarterback, or really whichever quarterback out of him and complete mind blank. Will Howard, there we go. Whichever quarterback out of the two of them does not win the starting job. I think the rumors about Julian Sayin challenging for the starting role are probably just that, rumors. I think Sayin is going to sit and learn and compete next year. But assuming that Will Howard wins the job, because he's the guy that Ryan Day went out and handpicked, and he has the huge NIL deal, I just think Devin Brown's Devy stock is absolutely on the floor right now. And if he doesn't get out, it's never going to recover. He can't play anywhere for more than 1 year after this year if he transfers. So he's going to have to go somewhere and absolutely light it up to rekindle his Devy stock.
Yeah, no, agreed completely. Agreed. And as an owner of him in 2 Devy leagues, I would very much vouch for that as well. Any value I can get back from him would be nice at this point because it's not looking all that rosy for him.
Right.
I've gone completely different with my number 4. This is a guy who will be on your radar if you are a deeper Devy player, but he really didn't kind of break out as a freshman last year as many expected that he would. I certainly thought he would. I'm going to talk about Nick Harbour at South Carolina, kind of wide receiver, tight end hybrid. He was the number 1 player on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list last year for all of college football, in spite of only just coming out of high school and into college. He was a 5-star recruit and a major coup for South Carolina. And when he went there, it certainly raised a lot of eyebrows. People weren't quite sure how he'd fit in. And then there was where he was going to play. He was recruited as an athlete, which normally means they project to be an outside linebacker or a defensive end ultimately. To give you an idea, he's 6'5" and runs a 100 meters, only 200ths of a second slower than Tyreek Hill, which is mind-bending. He's kind of the size of Calvin Johnson with the speed of Tyreek Hill. He just needs to put it all together. And I certainly kind of scooped him up in quite a lot of places last year, knowing that it was a project, but been more than willing to take the gamble. And last year, South Carolina were bad towards the end of the year. Let's just say it how it is. Saviour took the majority of the targets that were available. Spencer Rattler spent half the season running for his life behind some shambolic O-line play. And I just don't see it getting better. They're losing Leggett. They've lost Juice Wells in the transfer portal to Ole Miss. Obviously, Lenoris Sellers moves in at quarterback. Talented guy, but you're not talking about somebody of the stock and ilk of Rattler. And the O-line certainly hasn't got any better. And so whilst the target share might clear up for Nick Harbour, I'm certainly wondering if a steadier ship for him to be a part of and will aid that Devy stock and help him fulfill the outrageous potential he has as a physical specimen. I just feel like if he could land somewhere with better line play, more consistent, although it might be a little bit harsh on Sellers given his lack of game time so far, more consistent and steady quarterback play, he could really go on to boost that stock.
Yeah, I agree. I think he also needs to think about how he's developing as a player and what the coaches can do for him. And South Carolina just doesn't seem to be investing properly in his development. And so it's not just about his target share and the number of catches he gets. I think his physical development, his learning how to pick a position and learning how to play that position, absolutely, really important.
Absolutely. Come on then, hit us with your number 3, Jack.
My number 3, we'll go quick because this is someone we spoke about already, is Travis Hunter. Now, the main reason for Travis Hunter being on this list is because he needs a coach who is going to allow him to play one position and one position only so that he can ward off burning out and getting injured, because the number of snaps that he played last season is absolutely insane. The other problem, which has come out today, is, or not just today, but is how Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders seem to be treating anybody that transfers out of Colorado. And there seems to be a real culture issue in that locker room right now. The other problem is Deion Sanders going to stay at Colorado after Shedeur Sanders leaves for the NFL? I don't know. Obviously, Travis Hunter is eligible for the draft next year, so that might not be such a big problem for him. But that program's in transition. They're not very good. They don't have a lot of talent on the roster. I just love to see Travis Hunter go somewhere where the coaching staff are going to protect him, hone him in one position. And if that is cornerback, then his Devy value is pretty much gone. But as an NFL player, he's increased his value. And
absolutely.
Like we covered earlier, we'd love to see him in the NFL. We'd love to see him go in the top 10.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. And I think you're right about that kind of perceived culture issue. And the last thing he needs right now for his NFL draft stock, never mind his Devy stock, is anything that could tar him in a negative light and hinder that chance for him further down the line. Agreed. My number 3, again, is completely reactionary to some big news in college football this week. One of my favorite 2026 running backs is Miami's Mark Fletcher. I think he is an incredibly talented young man who showcased himself very well last year, again, in a very rocky Miami team. And I really thought this year was the year where he could absolutely dominate and go on to be up there, mentioned with the likes of Justice Haynes and Cedric Baxter potentially. And Miami have scooped for them as a program a major acquisition in taking Damian Martinez from Oregon State, the running back that we've mentioned previously several times on this show. One of the guys who stands amongst the top members of the pretty talented 2025 running back class. And I just worry about what it does for Mark Fletcher. If Mark Fletcher, obviously I realize like the college landscape's changing in how long guys can stay in school. But for running backs, when we talk about age and, what the NFL desires, the NFL isn't still showing itself to be overly favorable towards older backs. And, the longer Mark Fletcher waits, he's talented enough to come out in 2026, that's for sure. And I just feel like having to split carries, timeshare, work behind Damian Martinez, essentially, could have a knock-on effect on his landing spot. So, nice and quick. It's very reactionary. They might find a way to make it work, but this is who I think should test the portal to salvage some Devy stock. So I'm putting Mark Fletcher in there.
Good shout. I think the good thing for Mark Fletcher and the Devy landscape is that you seem to be the number one fan, but he's relatively unknown across the college sphere and the Devy sphere. So maybe he can fly under the radar and transfer somewhere else. All the positives and all the reasons that we love the landing spot of Miami for Damian Martinez. The downside, unfortunately, for Mark Fletcher, Martinez is going to demand a large share of the ball there. He's wanting to get drafted. He's want to get drafted high. He wants to, boost his NFL stock too. Yeah,
and it's quite right that he should. I think for Martinez, he's got to look after number 1, hasn't he? And you're right, protect his NFL stock and our Devy stock of him. Number 2, I can't wait to hear this one. This is interesting.
This is my spicy pick for who should enter the transfer portal, and that is Zachariah Branch, the wide receiver at USC. Now, his Devy stock is pretty flipping high as it is. And the reason I've thrown him in here as a fun exercise is partly because of the quarterback situation at USC, where Malachi Nelson has transferred out, and we all thought that he was going to be the heir apparent to Caleb Williams at USC. It sounds like Miller Moss has won that job, someone who's been around at USC for quite a while. And my concern is this uncertainty and lack of a superstar thrower at quarterback, because Miller Moss could prove me wrong, absolutely, but he's not a top Devy prospect. He's not a top college quarterback. Obviously, he has arguably the top quarterback coach as his head coach in Lincoln Riley. But the other thing about Lincoln Riley's offense at USC is that the ball has been thrown about all over the shop. There's not been a receiver to demand a 60, 70% target share while Lincoln Riley has been there. And that's just my slight concern. Could he go somewhere and be the alpha dog in that wide receiver room, command 70 to 80, even 80% of the targets, which would be absolutely insane. But Zach Branch is talented enough to do that, still at another big school. and just boost his numbers really, and boost his exposure to the ball, rack up yards and touchdowns that we want to see for Devy, that we want to see for the NFL, that we want to see for college fantasy football.
Yeah, no, totally. Zach Branch is a first round pick this year, and quite rightly so. Will it be the case next year? You'd like to think so, but if that production stalls as a result of that offense, no, I totally get that. I can see that. You're right, it is spicy, but you present a compelling argument, Jack.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, but I'd like to see it.
Yeah, why not? It's our exercise. We can do what we want. Number 2, I have split this because I couldn't decide which one I'd like it for more. But it's more the situation. So I wanted to look at the Georgia running back room. As we know, Georgia recruits at an insanely high level. They're always looking at the number 1 overall class year in, year out. This year's no different. But what we get is we get a logjam at certain positions, and even more so now you've got the transfer portal and players can move freely and willingly without repercussions, so to speak. So obviously Georgia this year have brought in Trevor Etienne was their kind of headline marquee running back that they brought across from Florida. I know we've spoken about that one before. He, again, is somebody who is widely tipped to be amongst those at the top of the 2025 running back class. And they also have Roderick Robinson from last year. We mentioned Nate Davis, the 2027 freshman, who's incoming. We mentioned him last time. And that just leaves 2 guys for me standing out like sore thumbs, who were both highly recruited, popular names in Devy circles, and ultimately you don't go to Georgia if you're not a talented back. I'm talking about Branson Robinson and Andrew Paul. Now, Andrew Paul has entered the transfer portal, and I think that's a smart choice for him. Both guys, Branson Robinson and Andrew Paul, have suffered massively with injuries, which has kind of derailed their Devy careers so far. But it's meant that as a result, they've ended up lost in the shuffle, lost in the logjam, and might not get their turn to the level that we feel like they need if they're going to recoup any of that Devy value. Obviously, Andrew Paul looks like he's healthy to go again. Branson Robinson still coming back from a torn patella, which just sounds like an absolutely horrendous injury, particularly for a running back. But yeah, both those guys for me are talented enough to, from what we've seen, to lead the vast majority of rooms in the country and go and be that lead guy who can take the carries and really boost that stock. And I just worry that if one of them or both of them don't get out soon, they're going to get lost in that shuffle and never really get the chance to kick on like we hope they would as Devy prospects.
I like it. And you know what? I've been thinking there is a perfect landing spot out there within the SEC that have a NFL running back has just gone in Cody Schrader at Missouri. Now, Missouri have brought in two group of 5 transfers in Nate Knoll and Marcus Carroll. So they brought in a couple of guys, but if Andrew Paul is now in the portal looking for a starting job at an SEC school that are set up for one back to take over, it's that competition would be over in a flash. Andrew Paul has more talent than the rest of that room. It would take a bit of pressure off him being in a crowded room, recovering from injury in a new environment. That's my dream landing spot for Andrew Paul.
And they are a program that is massively on the up. You look at what Coach Drink is doing there, and it deserves major plaudits. Like they performed so well to the back end of last season in the SEC, and they're really starting something. And that has got to be such a selling point. I'm shifting the focus slightly, but if you're Coach Drink now and you want to go into the portal and recruit who you want to recruit, you've got a returning quarterback in Brady Cook, who was playing as well as anybody in the SEC last year. You've also got the number one wide receiver at the moment in this next upcoming class in Luther Burden. And you can walk in there and claim a role if you genuinely believe you're going to be the guy. That's got to be such an impressive kind of sales pitch you can put together at the moment. And you're right. I think Andrew Paul would be mad not to take it. And I wonder if that's a conversation that's been had behind closed doors.
Let's see. Right, we've reached number one. We've reached number one. And for me, it is quarterback Noah Fifita at Arizona. Now, the main reason for this is his head coach left because the Washington head coach went to Alabama because Nick Saban retired. So Caleb DeBoer has gone to Arizona. Caleb DeBoer has gone to Alabama, meaning that Jedd Fisch left Arizona to take up the Washington Huskies head coaching position. And Jedd Fisch is a huge reason for Noah Fifita's development and rise from absolutely unknown prospect to third round Devy pick. Noah Fifita lit up college football last season when he eventually got the start in week 4 or 5. And that was due to a couple of injuries. But he and Ted McMillan have both committed to staying at Arizona. And I just wonder why. When, no offense to Arizona as a school, it's just the transition to a new head coach, a completely new regime. They lost a ton of talent. That O-line, I don't think they've got any returning starters because of either graduating to the NFL or entering the transfer portal. So Noah Fifita is going to be behind a completely new line with a completely new coach in trying to run a different system. If he had gone as I expected him to, and fair dues to him, like fair props to sticking to his school and the school that recruited him. But I just thought he would go to Washington to follow Jedd Fisch. He'd walk into that quarterback room and be the starter. He'd know the system. He'd know the coaches. So I think his Devy stock would be boosted if he had gone to Washington. But I do respect the fact that he has stuck with the school that recruited him and gave him a chance and ultimately have committed to him being their starter again this year.
Yeah, I think you've the key bit for me there is the line turnover. Like, unless he wants to show that he can run and escape and show plenty of maneuverability, I think he could be in for a tough year. And it remains to be seen, doesn't it? Like, I think there's still that conversation being had about how front offices in the NFL view the portal and view player movement and situations. And would he be looked upon favourably for staying, even if it does show that he can run through an adverse season? Who knows? It remains to be seen. But yeah, he could have gone to Washington and made that move. And I'm sure there are many other schools that were interested in him as well. So yeah, it seems like an opportunity missed to help him boost his Devy stock further. So my number one, kind of alluded to it before, I'm going to go back to Arch Manning. And I just feel like good players should be playing. And I know college football it doesn't always work that way. Waiting and biding your time at a big schools who eventually take the reins can be just as crucial and just as important. And in the world of NIL, there's no rush anymore. There's no big rush to be out in 3 years. But I just kind of feel like for Arch, there are other schools who would take him in a heartbeat. There are other schools that were very high in his recruiting, and it perhaps raised eyebrows when he didn't go, and that he chose Texas. I think there was the assumption that Quinn Ewers was going to move on. Obviously, injury derailed that and has led to Quinn Ewers coming back for another year. And, for me, there's also that track record of 1 year quarterback production. how many people play 1 year, and we can argue his talent is a 5-star, but how many guys, in the last few years have played 1 year of starting football, be it in the SEC or anywhere else for that matter, but gone on and transitioned to be an elite NFL quarterback? It hasn't happened. Like, what you're actually starting to see is more of a shift towards guys who have played a significant amount of snaps. That's where it's been valued. And if he hasn't got the experience, I heard somebody use the phrase, and it might have been on the Move the Sticks podcast this week, of who is the quarterbacky one? Can they show that they are quarterbacky? And I liked the term because it was what they were using to describe Brock Purdy, who went as Mr. Irrelevant. He was a quarterbacky quarterback. He had the experience of making calls at the line, of playing in multiple systems. And Arch, unless he gets himself out of that situation, is going to end up stuck doing nothing but taking practice reps with the second team. And for me, a boy of his talent shouldn't be. He should be elsewhere. And he could help that Devy stock even further, even though it's not exactly struggling at the moment.
Yeah, you're right. It's not struggling, but I definitely hear your point. I think for Arch Manning, like you said, there's no rush, and he has the perfect mentors in Eli and Peyton. They know what is required, what he would need to do in college in order to be ready for the NFL. So I honestly don't see Arch Manning going 3 and in. I think he will start next season, and he'll probably come back for a 4th year. And I think, money is not really a problem for him and his family.
Absolutely not. So, and he's certainly showed as well. Sorry to interrupt, Jack. He's certainly showed in the way he's carried himself so far that he kind of walks to the beat of his own drum. He makes his own decisions with his team and his family that are around him. Obviously, it's very, very private. His entire recruitment broke the mold in terms of the secrecy around it and access to him. His choice of school came from left field, to be fair. Many thought he was going to go to Ole Miss. Alabama were very much in the hunt as well at one stage. So going to Texas Kim's a little bit of a surprise. But he's trying to do things his way. Tennessee, again, following Uncle Peyton. But he's making his own choices. And it wouldn't surprise me if you're completely right. And he does kind of break the norms of what we expect to see players do. But this is my list, and I want him to play.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair.
Cool. So, listen, as always, like promised, we'll try and make this one quick. But a quick game of sell, keep, and acquire, Jack. Okay, so sell, keep, and acquire. Where are you this week?
I am acquiring, and I am shouting from the rooftops that there might be a tiny buy window on Tet McMillan, because he had a lower leg injury in practice last week. He's missed spring game. He was seen in a boot, and Brent Brennan has come out, and his quote is that McMillan has had a little procedure. Now, we obviously don't know what that means, but if it is an injury significant enough to indicate that he needs surgery, then this could be a longer term injury, or at least the doubt is in people's minds that this could be a longer term injury, that he's not as secure a Devy asset as we would like to think. So if you can lean on the Tet McMillan owner and push the news articles their way, just a quick little text, send, have you seen this? He might not play this season. Oh, what are the NFL going to think of this? Then there might be a tiny buy window for Tet McMillan. And I'm not saying that's going to come at a discount, but if you want to get hold of him, now is the time that I'm going to try and get hold of him.
You evil genius, you. Yeah, no, listen, I can see it. I think you're right. And I think that is the key thing there. When we're saying there's an acquire window, that doesn't necessarily mean you're getting him at, half the price. Like it doesn't necessarily work like that for guys that are going to be potential first round NFL draft picks. But it might just sow the seed of doubt and make the owner feel like actually they can part with him and, you know, I don't win now piece, you know, check the NFL side of their roster as well. Can you bait them with something there? But absolutely, listen, it always makes sense to try and go out and get good players. If there is any opportunity, then you should be attacking that opportunity hard. So yeah, I agree completely. For me,
I'd even say a recommendation: test the waters with if you haven't had your Devy draft yet this season, try and send your first round pick for Ted McMillan and see what comes back. That would be. I mean, I would say that would be cheap, but with the hype that these players are about to get, if you can suggest Jeremiah Smith's going to be available at your pick, someone might snap your hand off for a reset in the Devy sphere.
Absolutely. So mine's a little bit different. You're going from a guy who's going up, 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 up. I'm going from a guy who, like, if he fell any further down people's perspective at the moment, he might as well just stop playing now. But I'm going to go with Rocket Raheem Sanders. And interestingly enough, I'm going to call him a hold rather than a sell, because to be quite honest, I think if you try to sell him right now, you're not going to get anything for him. Nothing like what you would have got if you'd have got out a year ago. So I'm almost at a point now where for this guy who is a kind of once highly heralded kind of running back prospect, I think he's going to get lost among the shuffle. He's decided last year didn't go the way it wanted to at Arkansas, whether that was health, whether it was scheme. Things just didn't run for him the way we hoped, and he certainly didn't kick on in terms of his development. His value is rock bottom. He's decided to go back to school, and he's transferred to South Carolina, which is a weird sideways move for me. I don't see how he stands to gain value for his potential NFL draft stock, which is what I'm sure he's thinking about in that system. The O-line's absolutely awful, as we already mentioned when we were talking earlier about Nick Harbour. And the best thing I could say is you've missed your chance to sell. The chance to sell on Raheem Sanders was a year ago, because he is going to get well and truly lost in the shuffle behind Trevor Etienne, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Ashton Ginty, Damian Martinez, Ollie Gordon. Like, I've just named 6. Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, 7, 8. Okay, so all of a sudden, Raheem Sanders might be, at best, their 9th best running back. Amarian Hampton, he's not even in the top 10, right? So all of a sudden, like, you've got all these running backs that are headlining this kind of class that we're looking forward to as dynasty players, and that we've already got our kind of hands on in Devy circles. Raheem Sanders is going to get just left behind, and you've missed your chance to sell. Here's just hoping that he has a decent year at South Carolina and he finds his way to an NFL roster and just becomes a depth piece, taxi squad prospect for you. Because right now, selling him, I don't think you're going to find a buyer. So you might as well hold and ride it out.
You're definitely not finding a buyer. But here's some hope. If you do have him and you want to hold him, he's going into an offense without many experienced pieces. He is someone who has some experience of SEC football. He has some 1,000-yard season at Arkansas. He's going to be the primary weapon. Now, he and Lenoris Sellers are both going to run the ball quite a bit as a running quarterback. So he's going to have some open lanes because defenders are going to have to account for the quarterback. So there's your hope. There's a chance that he is the primary weapon and leads a less than fantastic South Carolina Gamecocks to a few wins.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said, Jack. Well summarized. Okay. That kind of brings us towards the end. Jack, it's been an absolute blast. Like, who would have thought we'd have so much to talk about at such a kind of quiet stage in the Devy year? But as always, mate, it's been an absolute blast. And we look forward to the next one. Just a quick reminder to everybody, You can find us out there on X at Wilcard Devy. Okay. You can find us also on the main squads page at Fantasy Wildcard on X and on YouTube. There is a whole load of great content going out now by the entire gang, whether it's the Dynasty show, whether it's the Rewind show. Obviously, I know the Gaffer's got plans to have a look at relaunching the DFS show. There's all sorts of stuff going on, and it is a fantastic team, so make sure you go and check them all out. Jack, same time in a fortnight?
Absolutely. See you then.
Shall we do some running backs next time?
Shall we finally do the running backs?
Yeah, we keep promising it, though. We keep teasing people. Go on. It's an excuse to look at some tape, isn't it? All right, mate?
All right. See you then.
See you soon.